Welcome back to the Thinking Mind podcast, a podcast all about psychiatry, psychology, psychotherapy, and related topics. This is part 2 of our conversation with author and speaker Jeremy Thomas. So if you haven't already, be sure to check out part 1, which we released last week. Today we pick up where we left off, discussing what it was like for Jeremy to experience manic depression or bipolar disorder, how he recovered, his experience writing his 2 novels, Taking Leave and the Santa Monica Suicide Club, and his experience co-producing the documentary The Secret Life of the Manic Depressive, starring Stephen Fry, Carrie Fisher, and many others. If you like the podcast, there are a few ways you can support it. You can follow or subscribe on whichever platform you listen, give us a rating, or if you want to support us further, you can check out the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. Thanks for listening.
They'd said to me when we were in this hotel, they'd sort of said, do you always stay in this hotel? Like there was something wrong with it. And it was a 5-star hotel. And I said, well, what's wrong? And and they said, our top clients stay. And they said, they stay in the Carlisle Hotel. So I said, well, you better just get on with it then and book 10 days in that hotel, the best suite. I won't have less. And book yourselves. And let's go. And that's what happened. It was a big deal. I mean, it was a lot of people were thinking, a lot of people came to the parties who were thinking I was going to be it, the new it. And I thought I was the new it. I really did. There was no doubt of that, and I was now Lord Thomas. The bodyguards had confirmed I was Lord Thomas. That was definitely a reality. And I was the boss of everybody. Everybody. And there was no higher authority than myself. And it was sort of great in some ways. And, again, when I sort of tell this in a talk, I don't really talk about this, but, one of the aspects of bipolar is your libido is going full Monty. I mean, I've never been somebody who would, go, oh, it's Saturday morning, I must get a prostitute. That's not really that type of person. But, that all happened, lots of it. And it was very weird, lots of parties and sort of like Hangover, the film, but a bit darker and a bit edgier. But, like American Express, we're going, I don't think we're going to give you any more credit. And I went mad and I hired lawyers, sue American Express for $5 million. They say American Express says more about you than your card ever, or whatever it was. It was like, that's bullshit. You're going to pay for this, all that sort of thing. And in the end, I was very lucky because I ran out of money, and that is very dangerous in New York when you've got 2 armed bodyguards who haven't been paid. And I had 2 great friends from school there. And they really saved my life. They really, Jeremy and Gillian, their names. They really did. They came in. I got hold of them. I said, bring me money. Now. and they went, oh, right, nice. And, I said, I only want $4,000. And that was a fortune then. Anyway, they came and they saw, and it was like grand piano, four bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, kitchen and dining room, staff quarters. This was huge. It was Warren Beatty's suite.
At the Carlisle.
Yeah. And I never ever say it's the Carlisle, but there we go. I've said it.
Shout out to the Carlisle.
Yeah. Well, blimey. They were brilliant. They just got my confidence. They went, oh, this is great. Really brilliant, fantastic. Love your girlfriends that you've got here and the security people and Paul McCartney, marvellous. And oh, what a place. And, oh, hang on a minute. Forgotten we got an appointment. back in an hour. And they raised the alarm. They rang London and got them. And, it's very, very difficult to rescue people out of that situation. Because I'm going, what are you talking about?
Everything's great.
What are you talking about? Do you know how impertinent you are being?
It reminds me what you're just describing reminds me a bit of the end of Lord of the Flies, when the kids are all fighting each other on the island.
Yeah.
And they're stuck in that world. That world is everything.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, the adult steps off the ship, and they're like, "What is going on here?"
Well, that's a lovely comparison. I love that book. I think that book's a very important book, actually. Yeah, well, I mean, it was, I hadn't slept for about 4 nights. And that's quite a long time. And, and I'm beginning to feel like a very, very bad flu. Get me a doctor. Don't have any money. Long story short, they got a doctor who was English, who was called Dr. Colt. And he had a speciality in bipolar. Just luck. He was the hotel doctor. And he came along, and basically the first time he got it wrong because you didn't use my full title and, whatever, there's a load of nonsense. But he had to come back the next day. And this time he went, "Oh, your lordship, I'm very sorry, I've actually got a brilliant injection for you, which will really sort out that flu. And it's called a B13 shot." And I'm going, "B13? I've never heard of that." And he went, "Oh, no, it's new. It's new." He told all the others. And I went, "Well, you just better get on with it then." Because that was the whole vibe. So, and it's obviously intramuscular. And what it was about, 500 milligrams of Largactil. And he'd also said to all my friends who were there, you can time this by about, so it should take less than a minute and he won't be standing up anymore. And I was. And I did for a further 2 hours. And I went, we had to go to the bank, Chase Manhattan, and oh my God. Anyway, finally, clonk. And then I came down, and they really did save my life. And various people sent some funds in to try and sort out the bodyguards and hotel. And I ended up going first class back to London. And my friends had found an air hostess off duty, and they'd said, "Look, here's $50. Will you sit next to him? And he's very, very nervous flyer. It's terribly nervous. If he starts to wake up, give him another one of these." So anyway, long story. That's a very long-winded way of saying that, in the end I got back to London and was taken to hospital. I went to one hospital, which was the Priory in Roehampton. Anyway, I got transferred to the Royal Bethlehem.
I've worked there.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I was very lucky, and I was there for 5-6 weeks.
And during this time, how one of the problems, as we've already pointed out, with being in a manic state is it's very hard to accept that you're unwell, or maybe this is a mental health condition. What was that like for you? Did you come to terms with it quite quickly, that that's what was happening, or was it more gradual than that?
I think that it's rather like descending in a lift. That you hit another floor and you go, oh, I see. Oh, I'm not that. So the Lord Thomas thing isn't true. Clunk, another lift. Oh, and that's not true either. I think it took me, because you sort of go, well, obviously I was very hyper. That's what I said to myself. You went a bit hyper. And of course you're still low level manic, but certainly not psychotic. Well, it took me to the end, really, of that period, to really, really, really come down. And the thing that really did it was, of course, lovely Loveday, who was smashing, actually, who I'd met at the airport. He'd come to meet me, and she'd come to see me a few times, obviously, but she came for a final time, and I was supposed to, when I was day before I was coming out, and she, she was very brave, and she went, look, I can't do it. I cannot do this anymore, and I'm going to resign. And I remember I couldn't believe it. It was like, what? How can you? And she went, well, I can. And of course, you look back and you think, poor girl, awful. But that was quite a big punch, more than a punch. Anyway, but that was probably quite helpful in a way. And then I came back and I was trying to get the business going, really trying to get it going. My brother was very helpful. Some people have said it'll really go. Some people said, forget it, you never do it. And then, of course, everyone's talking nutter. He's insane. He's this, he's that. Did you know what he did?
A lot of stigma thrown at you.
Yeah. And I tried really hard to get it going. I was...
were you taking medication at this time?
Yes. I think it was lithium and some other things. And in trying not to drink, that was the other thing.
Did you find it hard to work with... Did the medication affect your work, or the lack of sort of that manic confidence, did those affect your work?
I think the difficulty was that I just actually felt depressed. I felt marginally depressed, and I'm thinking, most likely I'm going to lose my flat because I was aware of the money. Because there's a lot of money, a lot. But I did try, and then in the end, I just couldn't do it, and it went nosedived into really, really bad depression and terrible, and of course it was all compounded by, debts and this and that. How, you're probably going to have to sell this, and you have to lose that. Oh, and you're busted for drinking and driving again, and
just all the realities.
Yeah, so and being quite lonely, I think, even though I had real support from friends and everything, and I felt lonely. That was not good. That was quite. Again, I don't talk about this normally, but that was bad. I was an outpatient with Paul Mullen at the Maudsley, and he was great. And I remember he said to me, look, any time of the night and day, any time at all, if you really get to a really bad stage, ring me. Here's my home number, which I thought was amazing. And it did get to that, it got to that twice. And he was fantastic. Absolutely, and I just couldn't believe it. It was so crying, and, I'd sort of swallowed a whole load of things, and, but he was wonderful, actually. Really, really, gosh.
What do you think? A bit of a tangent, but people listening will be interested. What do you think makes a good clinician or a good support, good doctor in those circumstances?
Consistency, being honest, really, I think, and being, so that you can trust that person. And it's very difficult, that, because it puts the clinician, psychiatrist in a very tricky position. I remember being very annoyed once and being in the Maudsley, and he was saying to me, he said, "Look, believe me, it will be okay. It will get better." And I went, "How do you bloody know?" Really terrible. How can you be so bloody sure, Mr. Big Head? And he was great because he was all very, Buddhist calm, and he said. He said, listen, I've done this for 24 years. I've seen a lot of people just like you, and I've seen what's happened to them. And that's how I know, experience. So trust me. And I think It's very difficult. I imagine. I've never been in the other way around, but I think that's what you want. You want somebody who's tell you the truth, not be a sort of kamikaze pilot with it. I mean, in other words, somebody who's got some kindness to them, but is prepared to be honest and say, look,
honest but delicate.
Yeah, honest but delicate, but also tough. In the sense of saying, if you don't take this medication, let me explain what is going to happen to you. Because I think that people need to know that, and sometimes if someone doesn't say it with a degree of sincerity, then somebody goes, well, I didn't really like the way they said that, so I decided not to take them. But
doctors can learn a lot about confidence and persuasion skills. One problem with medical school is we're given the knowledge and the information, but the paradigm we're operating in, I think kind of unconsciously, is like, okay, here's the information. If you give the information to the patients, this will work, and they'll take the information on board and they'll get better. But of course, what that doesn't take into account is that people really aren't, for the most part, rational, logical thinkers who are looking for the best information. People are emotional creatures. And as you know from your work experience, we're swayed by persuasion, by confidence, by emotional factors. And as doctors, we're never taught how to package our information, how to do the marketing, if you like, how to deliver our information in a way that's persuasive. Some doctors, like the one you mentioned, they cultivate that skill, but it's not something, I think it should be more baked into everyone's medical training.
Yes, I think, yes, I get what you're saying. I think, it's difficult, this. Basically, if you don't have somebody who's empathetic, I think that's very tricky. And some people are not, because they go, you must take the lithium. If you don't, you will die. And that's the end of it. And you're going, I don't think I like that person. As you say, the problem is patients are not rational in that stage. And
I just want to make it clear so it's not misconstrued. I'm not saying patients or psychiatric patients aren't rational. I'm saying people, full stop, aren't rational.
Yeah. Well, of course. And of course, we all want to be, loved and, told all sorts of nice things. But I think that, in the end, there are ways in which people can talk to people, and and that's to be straight with them, and what you do is you get each side of your mouth and you smile, and it makes a big difference because people are frightened. That's the other thing that happens, isn't it? That we're frightened and we're going, God, I'm switching off because, I think he's going to say something really bad, I don't know. But yeah, I also think people get a hard time. I mean, I talk at, I have done a lot of schools over the years. And, I can see it's very difficult for some teachers because they go, look, excuse me, I'm a maths teacher. I'm not a bloody psychiatrist. Why should I know all this information? And why should I have to make judgments of kids in my class? I teach maths. And you go, yeah, you do. But look, you can look out for things. Even if you find it difficult to talk, you can find someone who can talk. Now that's in those situations.
So after your first time in hospital, did you have many manic episodes after that?
I had 3 or 4, but they were sort of much milder. The big one, which was interesting, was that exactly a year later, I'd managed to find an office. Somebody had offered me an office and in the music business, and I'd got a few things going, vaguely. And out of the blue, there was a very famous producer in America called Arif Mardin, who produced Aretha Franklin, Chaka Khan, the Bee Gees, the Average White, millions. Brilliant guy. Brilliant. Anyway, somehow I must have sent him a tape of some song. The next thing you know, he's going to record 2 songs of my artist. And I don't know if you've ever heard of somebody called Leo Sayer. No, that's terrible. Anyway, that's really worrying. So I went, I must go. And it was going bzzz, like that. It was honestly. And my brother had a very hard job because he was sort of my older brother. He was very, very good to me. But, you know, we had really fought a lot. And he said, you can't go. Don't be ridiculous.
This is back to New York?
Yeah. And I said, well, I am going. And he said, well, I'm not giving you, I've got your credit card. You've got 1 credit card left. And I'm keeping it. I think the fact was that I sort of felt very resentful to everybody about this. But I got there. I wasn't really aware that I was vaguely manic. And I remember somebody said to me, you can have a desk in our office. And 2 days later, they said, could you not have a desk in our office? Because I'd used the phone, 1 million times. And I'm going, what the hell? What's the problem? And they went, it was like that, I had decided to stay in the New York Athletic Club. I ran up a very, very big bill, though, bar bill. You weren't allowed to have women in the club. And because I'd been thrown out of this office, I was going to have a temporary secretary from an employment agency. I hired this girl, and in the athletic club, you could have lunch with women. That was okay. So I figured that if we had lunch, there was another secret lift, and we could go up to my room, and then I said, I told her to bring a typewriter. And I really was actually only planning on doing that. But coincidentally, she was very, very good looking. And anyway, he went up there. I mean, this is a silly anecdote, right? And she's typing away, doing this is great. And she was gorgeous, but, I was being professional. And the phone rang. I mean, it's the manager of the hotel, of the club. And he said, listen, we know you've got someone in your room. And we know that she's probably a hooker. And I went, a hooker? How dare you say that? And I said, do you know what you can do with your club? So that was quite an interesting example. Because I then found myself on the pavement outside. The girl went, thanks very much. Bye. And I'm going, I've just saved your reputation, And she went, bye. I had no credit card. I managed to check into a very nice hotel, courtesy of this record producer. He said, look, I'll recommend you in there, don't worry about it. And that, within 6 days, had gone dramatically wrong. It was just because it was just too much drinking. And, who is this guy?
And then how did that end?
So that ended very badly. That ended with basically the owner of the hotel saying that locking me out of the room. And I said to the people there, I said, how can you do that, And they said, well, we just can. And I said, no, you can't. So I went to the police and brought the police along, and huge drama. And then the police went, look, you probably actually have to leave the hotel, but you can have all your stuff from the room. And what the owner of the hotel had made sure, he knew that I was going on a plane back to London that day. So he'd made sure I didn't get the passport or the hotel back until after the plane had left.
So then you went back to London, and then were you in hospital again after that? No,
I didn't go to hospital at all after that. It's a matter of scale, I suppose, where you suddenly think, as I was telling you earlier, going to Germany, going to the south of France, and going to Wales. I mean, I went to Wales I took a minicab to Cardigan, which is only about 200 miles. Stayed in a hotel there, and then I found it was a converted nunnery that was for sale. And I decided, well, I have actually got to have this because it's going to be a brilliant recording studio, bit of residential this, marvellous. And yeah, I'm just going to have it. Oh, I know. Yes, that's right. And it was at a time when the banks, clearing banks, were giving a deal whereby you could get money from them, providing you had enough money to match it, a matching loan. So if somebody gave you 50 grand, they'd give you 50 grand.
And then how did that episode resolve?
Well, that episode resolved in it that I didn't buy it, and I rather disappointed the people in that town because they all thought I was going to buy it.
How did the manic episode resolve?
I met a doctor, private doctor, and we became friendly, and I had no money at all, and he said, look, I'll just do this for free, let's do it. He was interested in the subject. And he said, the first thing, Jeremy, you really have got to do is you've got to get this medication under control because you haven't. That's what I did. For me, that was lithium, and I really started to take it properly every day, and I started to get blood tests, and it wasn't all perfect, peaches and cream, but the manic episodes stopped. I think if you have it, you still get a little bit of a tiny rev of it. You get when there's like really good news and you're really working hard on something, a little, you can get a bit speedy, but that's as far as it goes.
And so, do you still take medication now?
Yes, I still take exactly the same medication.
Wow.
And I've taken it, it's a long time, 33 years.
So it's lithium mainly?
Yeah. No, I don't take anything else. I just stick to this. There were 5 things that really sorted me out. I mean, got me back. One was the acceptance, really, of that this is what you've got. And hello, you really do need to take medication and lithium. That's what worked for me. I got a job. Running a punk rock psychobilly record label, which is great. I did that for 4 years, and then I got a very much bigger job to run a big company, and that was great, except there were these blips that kept happening, and in the end I worked out that the blips really were all to do with alcohol. That lots of people had said to me over the years, really, you should stop drinking, And I just refused, basically, because it was the one thing I liked doing and the one thing I was good at. And anyway, I finally stopped, and, I'm quite sort of public about this, that I joined AA, and it made a lot of sense that what I heard in AA wasn't just about drinking, it was about thinking. And that really answered a lot of questions to me. And I think the 12-step thing is very good for people with bipolar, I really do. And yeah, it helped enormously, and it sort of took it down a more spiritual path as well, which was good. And then that led me into writing. And I got, I'd been doing it, I'd been in AA 5 years, and it was a lot for me to stop drinking. It was a huge thing,
Tell me about what it was like to write your 2 novels. So you've written, the first novel is Taking Leave, the second one is Santa Monica Suicide Club.
Yes.
What was it like to write those books?
Well, Taking Leave, the story is is the same story as what happened in New York. And I'd had that commissioned as a film script. Somebody wanted me to write it for a film. And then, so I'd spent a lot of time doing that. And then I got properly commissioned to write it as a novel. And I went away to Greek island to do that. It was very interesting because I really wanted it to be a success. If you've never written a novel before, that's quite hard. And I had a patron who's a very famous German film composer called Hans. And he was very great. And he said, look, just do it however you want to do it. But remember, we all know you're very funny, and that's fine. But what we want to know is we want to know about the pain. And I went, did you say pain? And he went, yes, we want to know about that, because there's no point writing a funny book unless you've got pain in it, because we need both. So, because he'd been so good to me, I just thought, right, okay, right, I better try and do that. So I wrote about lots of things. I wrote about difficult things. Writing is great therapy in that way, that we all keep secrets and things that, have happened or done to us or we've done to them. And you want to write about it and get it out of you. And I did with that. It was very good because it was a nasty thing. Taking Leave was, originally it was called Shedding Skin. And it's an obvious title. And originally it was 225,000 words, and it became 116. Writing is a very interesting process in terms of mental health, because it involves staying up on the horse, every day, doing it. Resilience.
Consistency.
Yes. Stick your backside on the chair every morning and do it. And also make sure that you do other things in the day, play squash, swim, see friends, have a laugh. And I think that's, really important. A lot of it is about having faith. It's very tricky sometimes when you write books. You can get to the middle and you go, blimey, you idiot. What are you thinking? This is crap. And it's not. It's not. You may have gone off a bit, but, you can get back on the track. And, I think to myself how long these things took. I'm very proud of that book, Taking Leave. I think it's a really good book.
How long did it take you to write?
3.5, 4 years. I was on Patmos for 2 years. I went to Los Angeles, and then I went to Vancouver for another year, and I came back. But, I was lucky. I had editors. I worked with editors, and I think that's really important. Yeah, what can I say? Writing books. In Santa Monica, that was fun because I'd lived in Santa Monica for a bit. So I got this idea of, he was going to be a priest. I wrote it originally that he was a priest. He was a Catholic priest from London who'd gone on secondment to Santa Monica. And I wrote about 6 or 8 chapters. And then I contacted my agent and I said, I'm sending this over to see what you think. And it was terrible. He came on to me, Matthew Hamilton, and he said, Jeremy, are you slightly mad? And I said, well, I can be. And he said, yeah, but, you've written a book about a Catholic priest. Are you aware of the terrible prejudice about Catholic priests at the moment? And I said, well, I think it's really good. And he went, please, don't do it. And I changed it, and I didn't. And in a way, I regret that now, because I think maybe I should have just stuck to my guns. But I have I changed it, and a new character who's 6'3", large, always wears a suit, a failed British actor, who ended up living in Los Angeles and becomes a private investigator. And the book starts with him in his battered old Volvo on Santa Monica Beach, feeding a hose pipe that's come from the exhaust into his car, and he is about to commit suicide.
Wow.
And the reason he is because he's been a private investigator for 4 years. and it's just looking after people, chasing dogs, lost cat, this, and it's all, oh, I can't cope. And just as he's about to switch on the engine, the phone rings, and it's a lady who has a sort of candle for him, holds a torch for him, who is the assistant to the chief of police of Santa Monica. And she says, I shouldn't be telling you this, but the third richest man in Mexico's son has been found dead on Ocean Avenue, fantastic apartment. And our two detectives have been to see the body, and they think it's suicide. But I'm pretty sure it's not. Anyway, the family have come over, and they don't want to work with the police. Get down there. And he does, and he gets hired, and that's
wow. That's a compelling start.
It's a good book actually. It's a good book. Good book. And that is going to be a TV series, we're pretty certain. So,
what do you think makes for a compelling story?
Well, I think compelling characters. Where you have a character that you go, this guy is screwed up, but I really like him. Or, she, I really don't like her. She's an absolute bitch, and, but I want to see what happens. I think you've got to like the characters or really dislike them, but mainly like, and you want to know what happens, and you like the environment. Like some people really like the music business, and taking leave, they're going, oh, I loved all that, Sounds crap, doesn't it, to say you care? But I think you do. You have to care about your world and your characters, and you want to see what becomes of them, and that they'll win out or something. Yeah. What do you like? Do you like?
I definitely resonate with what you said. You want to have a compelling character that's full of conflict, and when you said that, I was reminded of Tony Soprano, someone like that.
Do you know how weird that is? I've just been on Patmos, right? And I have a huge, stupid, ancient telly that can only play DVDs. I bought a box set of The Sopranos. And, of course, I've watched it before, but I've forgotten what I watched. And I watched the opening episode, and it's so good because here's Tony Soprano, big lump and, horrible sort of mafia, violence, etc. But we see him knocking on this door, and it's the lady psychiatrist, and it's the first time. And I don't know whether it flashes, I don't know whether it's real or whatever, but when he's seeing her, in his mind, he goes to, waking up in bed with his wife, and there's a noise of chickens or ducks. And he goes out, and there's this little ducks landing on the swimming pool. I just thought that was so brilliant, and he runs, and oh my God, the ducks, they'll be all right, because you think he's going to shoot them, but I just thought that was such a brilliant idea.
It was incredible. So definitely something about a story that can embrace people's complexity, and then a story that moves, that's dynamic, where something happens, something changes. Which, interestingly, The Sopranos isn't a very good example of that, because really The Sopranos is kind of weirdly a study of failure. Like, ultimately he failed to change. But most stories, I think, have a more dynamic component where someone undergoes a transformation.
Yes. Well, yes, you want to see the arc.
The arc.
And all that. But funnily enough, I just thought that beginning, I couldn't believe how good it was. There's the kids, there's Mrs. Soprano, and way before you get to the mistress, and here's the psychiatrist. It's such a clever, layer.
Very layered.
Layering.
Very layered.
I loved that. Isn't that funny you should say that?
One last thing I want to talk about before we draw to a close is the documentary The Secret Life of the Manic Depressive.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you're aware how important that documentary is. I watched it. I believe it came out in around 2006.
7, I think.
Seven.
Yeah.
I watched it, I think, in 2012, 2013, when I was actually on my first psychiatry placement as a training doctor.
Right.
And it was this, I think, when it came out, for everyone, a bit of a watershed moment to see someone like Stephen Fry, but also all of the other people that were involved, to be so frank about having not just depression, but manic episodes, suicidality, and I think that normalized it for so many people.
The funny thing is, because it won this big award, at the time, well, 2 years later, best Emmy for international documentary, and we all thought, well, that's very nice. Ooh, well done. That's really good. But because I've worked a lot, as I say, with schools and companies and meeting people, the amount of people who've come up to me and gone, that documentary meant everything. That changed everything for us. My family, diddly-diddly. And so I think it really was huge. And to give credit, it was my friend Tony Hughes, my doctor friend. It was his idea to do it, and he sort of lanced me in to help. But there were a lot of very good people on the production. Ross Wilson, the producer director, was really great. Loads of good people involved, and a lot of hard work went into that. And I don't want to dismiss that, because it's very easy just to go Stephen Fry. But the point about it was that Stephen Fry took all his clothes off, metaphorically, and was very honest. That's huge stuff, because in 2006, 2007, even then, people were going, yeah, bipolar. And here he was. And so there were people who had shame, who had embarrassment. Oh, no, God. They go, my God, did you see Stephen Fry on the telly? I loved, Richard Dreyfuss, the lady, oh God, what's her name? The actress who...
Carrie Fisher.
Carrie Fisher, sadly died now. Carrie Fisher was great, and she was not in a great space when that was done, actually. There was so much work in it, and no, I'm very proud to be involved, to have been involved in that. I think it really, really made a difference. And Tony and I don't know whether you know this, I think you did, that Tony and I did a book together.
You don't have to be a celebrity to have bipolar.
You don't have to be famous to have manic depression, yeah.
I think I think the documentary is certainly a huge net positive. One issue that did crop up that I've seen in my clinical work is that it glamorized bipolar somewhat. And people almost on some level wanted to have bipolar, or if they had another kind of mental health condition, they were much more keen to reframe it as having bipolar.
Yes.
And I think it's important to understand that correlation is not causation, that being famous and successful and having bipolar doesn't mean that the bipolar had much to do with that. But it can actually, I think on some level, sometimes it can. We've outlined how mania can give you that confidence, but it's generally not very sustainable. You see that with Kanye West, I think, is a really good example. I don't know, did you follow what happened to Kanye West last year?
Well, I sort of vaguely did. How did he end up? Is it finished, or?
I don't know what's happening with him now, but what was happening a lot last year was that he was clearly manic and doing a number of interviews in a manic state.
Yes.
And people in manic states say things which are very bizarre, and he was saying a lot of anti-Semitic things.
Right.
And what I thought was a bit horrible about it was that none of the press coverage took into account that he was clearly suffering from a mental health condition. And they took everything he said at face value, and they made it a character judgment.
Yeah. I remember I used to run a manic depression group, manic depression fellowship a group in Chelsea years ago, and I remember a girl saying she was new to the group, and she said, "I don't want to be manic depression. I don't want to be manic depressive." And I said, "Okay, what do you want to be then?" And she said, "I want to be bipolar." And this was then, and I said, "Why do you want to be bipolar?" And she said, "It's more attractive name." And it's like,
It's all about marketing.
But I mean, I do understand that, what you said, and I think it is a danger that people, there's a sort of cosmetic industry of psychiatry and terms. You should listen to my podcast. Actually, Tim Lott has a very good talk about ADHD, but I mean, I think the thing is it's not too. It's a balance, that, isn't it? Because I remember when I started to really find out about manic depression, bipolar, because there weren't any books or anything. But once I found out, and I found out, this person, that person, this person, that, oh my God, that made me feel better.
Yes.
And
that's a lot of people rail against diagnosis, and there are a lot of good points in the criticism of psychiatric diagnosis. But one of the points in its favor is that finding out that you have a collection of problems that many people have experienced and that tend to occur together, and for which there are treatments available, even if they're imperfect.
Yes.
It's a relief to find out that you're not uniquely, that you're not uniquely flawed.
Well, of course. And I mean, actually, what I meant, Alex, by that, that is good, what you just said. But what I meant was there are various, writers and painters. Virginia Woolf, you could say Van Gogh, I would say that anyway. And it's not so that, I'm like Van Gogh, but you're in company, you're in good company. And these people manage to do things, because I think that's the other thing that goes wrong for people with bipolar, is that they burn out through manias, manic episodes, and they feel they can't achieve anything. And I think, that is the big deal, because we need to achieve things, even if it's emptying the dishwasher. And, when I took that job running that punk rock label, I was really snotty about it. I was going, no, I'm not going to do this. You must be joking. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it gave me a routine, and it gave me a little, it's great, marvellous. I loved it. And I'm a great believer there's a vault of self-esteem, and we need to look after that thing.
Absolutely, yeah. We need to nurture it.
Yes. And go, come on, let's pop down to the vault. Let's go and sort a few things out, like me failing those exams, I never talked about it ever. And, it was like, right, I'm going to write about this.
And process it.
Yeah. And just, but almost by writing, you give it oxygen, and then it takes all the oxygen out of it,
Well, Jeremy, it's been wonderful. We talked about it all. I think a lot of people will be able to learn a lot from the experiences that you've been so kind to share with me today. Thank you very much. Where can people find you?
Well, they can find me on Shed Talks. That's my podcast, which I like. I know I shouldn't say that, but I'm going to say it. JeremyThomasTalks.co.uk. That's where people can find me, and that's it's a bit talky.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Great. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks so much for listening this week. If you've got any feedback, as always, do get in touch. If you enjoyed the episode, why not give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, because it really helps other people to find us. If you want to get in touch, you can find us on Instagram or Twitter, or you can drop us an email. And if you value the show more generally, why not buy us a coffee? Thanks so much.